Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lesson we are going to start to explore the observable-based API of AngularFire. Let's start by using our about component in order to perform a simple query. We are going to retrieve our list of courses again, just like we did before using the Firebase SDK, but this time around we will use AngularFire instead. So in order to do that, we are going to need the Angular Firestore service. So let's then go ahead and inject it here at the level of our constructor. Now let's start exploring the API of AngularFire. Let's have a look at the methods that we have available here. So as we would imagine, we have here a method for returning a document and another one for returning a collection. So as you can see, this API on a first look is very similar to the one of the Firebase SDK. Let's continue exploring this API. Let's call the method collection and let's pass it a path. We're going to pass it the path courses, which hits the courses collection at the root of our Firestore database. Now let's have a look at what we get here as a return type. If we hit Control Space, we are going to see that we have here several methods available. So one is the get method, which is very similar to how the get method works in the Firebase SDK, but we also have here other methods available. We have, for example, here the method value changes, which returns us an observable. We have also state changes and snapshot changes. So this is the main fundamental difference between AngularFire and the Firebase SDK. AngularFire provides us with an observable-based API, which is very convenient for developing Angular applications using the reactive approach. Let's then start exploring this observable-based API, and we're going to start with this value changes method. So this is going to return us an observable. Let's have a look at the values returned by this observable by simply subscribing to it and logging the values here in the console. With this logging in place, if we have a look here at the value that we get printed in the console, we're going to see that we have an array of 11 elements, and if we inspect the array, we're going to see that each element here is an instance of a course, but this does not contain the ID. This is only the data. So this is the result of calling the method .data on the document snapshot, as we have seen on previous lessons. As we can see, the values emitted here by the value changes observable correspond to the data on the collection only, without the IDs. So in this case, we are emitting an array with 11 elements, each element corresponding to one of these documents data. So the question that you are probably asking yourself at this point is, what is the big difference between this value changes observable and the promise that was returned by the Firebase SDK? Besides the fact that we had a complete snapshot that also included the identifier, for example. Well, the main difference is that the value changes observable gives us a live connection to the Firestore database. So if, for example, we clear here our console and we now switch to the database and we simulate the updating of one of these courses, let's say that we are going here to the Angular PWA course and we would change this title to the Angular Progressive Web Applications course and we hit update, this value is going to get updated in the database, but now if we switch back to our application, we're going to see that the value changes observable has emitted here a new value. And if we inspect here the first element of the array, which happens to be the Angular Progressive Web Applications course, we are going to see that indeed this description includes the latest text that is available on the database. This means that the value changes observable is a live observable. It's a multi-value observable. So unlike the typical HTTP observable, this observable will not only emit a single value and then complete, but it will emit multiple values over time. If we clear again here the console and we switch back here to the database and we change again this description, and let's use the text Angular PWA. If we update this description, again we get here a new value emitted with the latest title being used. So this means that with this value changes observable, we have a permanently opened connection with the database and we are listening for changes as they happen. So we can say that the value changes observable emits the current state of our courses collection as the collection is getting modified. We don't receive via this observable any metadata, and we don't receive namely the course identifier of each course document. So when should we use value changes? Value changes is great for displaying data in our application. If we just want to quickly get a list from our database and display it on the screen, then value changes is the way to go. However, in our applications, we usually also want to modify the data at some point. So for that, we are going to need the data identifier, namely the course ID. We are going to see how to obtain it using another observable, snapshot changes.